want to say hello. My name's Kate Willman and I'm a visiting fellow here at the Institute of Modern Languages Research, attached to the Centre for Contemporary Women's Writing. And I'm really happy to welcome you all to this event, Women's Self-Representation in the Digital Age. The original idea for this event was that I was going to organise a workshop about contemporary women's writing and autofiction. But then I began to think that the more my research kind of progressed, I began to think that in the digital age we need to start thinking beyond perhaps just one type of media and think about other platforms. And I'm really happy that today we're going to be looking at images, videos, online content, as well as literature and book objects. So I'm really excited, and I want to thank all the speakers for offering such interesting sounding papers, which I'm really looking forward to hearing. And I think it will really contribute to thinking across disciplines and across media about issues related to how women have constructed and mediated their identity on and offline. So thank you for that. And I also want to say thank you to the INLR and the CCWW, especially Jill Rye and Shirley Jordan and Cassie Collins, who helped me organise this event and also move the date, which was a really unfortunate date for me. So thank you for being open to doing that. And I also want to thank you all for coming, and I hope we can have a good discussion after the papers at the end of each panel. So I think what we'll do is we'll have the papers and then we'll have a discussion at the end of each panel. There is a hashtag if people want to tweet about today's event, and it's kind of cool because it sounds like a call to arms as well. So I think I'm the only person who's used it so far. So if you want to say anything on Twitter, then please do. And also, because it is the digital age, I wasn't going to give long introductions to each of our speakers on the understanding that you can Google them or use other search engines to find out more information about them. So I'm really happy to introduce our first speaker, Hannah Westley, who's an assistant professor in comparative literature and English at the American University of Paris, and she'll be talking about narrating the feminine selfie.
Thank you. Well, there are a few more sort of ubiquitous or more divisive areas of self-representation now than the selfie, right? So, it's a provocative place to start, perhaps. There has been a sort of a significant body of research that has grown up around selfies over the past few years, right? And but few of those sort of explorations have looked at how the selfie might fit into larger ideas about narrative and narrative online, right? So what are we thinking about when we think about narrative online? What does that narrative look like? How do we conceive of narrative online? So that's what I'm going to be talking about now. But I mean, I first started getting interested in selfies. And self-representation has always been my field of research. I started off with French orthography, and I looked at self-portraiture and the visual arts. And it was the headlines that caught my eye, right? I mean, self-representation, it seemed to me, had gone viral, right? Self-representation was haunting every corner of my students' imaginary. And there was a great sort of discrepancy between what I saw in the classroom as this sort of popular movement and the headlines, or sort of dominant discourse. So dominant discourse was upgrading the selfie everywhere as being vain and narcissistic. Not only would it give you headlines, it was bad for the environment. Selfies are also fatal, right? They will kill you. Selfie taking is a really, really bad habit. So I started looking at selfies in much the same way as I had studied previously self-representation in visual arts. So I was looking at selfies as a sort of a bounded text, right? I looked for conventions that would define the genre. I looked for visual tropes. I looked for visual clues to the identity of the sitter that were contained within that small frame, right? So I was looking to sort of gesture, composition, expression, lighting, all of those things. I started to think about the way in which these young women, and yes, it is mainly young women who take selfies, were negotiating pre-existing visual tropes, how these young women were seeking to come into representation, right? So, so here you'll see, and a lot of writing has sort of grown up about this, the way in which selfies, there are sort of very gendered tropes in selfie taking, right? So here we see sort of a feminine trope, right, which has come down to us, which is familiar to us from mass media images such as these, right? And then some of you might remember that when you look at your Instagram page, the masculine tropes that have grown up tend to be sort of the camera angle is very different. Masculine selfies will often, the camera angle will be low, they'll emphasize sort of the chest, sort of virility, in action, doing things, right? So very different. So I started thinking about these sort of gendered tropes. Katie Warfield has written a lot about this. I started thinking also about the way in which these tropes had come down to us from art history, art historical traditions, right? So this is one of Kim Kardashian's more iconic selfies. It caused great controversy when it first appeared, because it was taken shortly after she'd had a baby. And so here you see, this kind of illustrates the ways in which selfies collapse distinctions between sort of the private and the public, the self and media, and here, of course, sort of Madonna and whore, right? So here she is presenting herself as a sexual temptress shortly after becoming a mother, right? Okay, but so thinking about the selfie in this way, I'm thinking about the selfie as a sort of a reflected, an instance of identity that is reflected and received, right? There is a sort of a semiotic economy, the collapse of the signifier and the signified, right? So in a Cartesian logic, to represent things accurately in the world is to know and understand them, right? So if we're going to pursue that logic, to think about selfies in that fashion means that you look at the likeness of the self, the person who's taking the selfie, and this will reveal the identity of the selfie taker, right? But of course, I realised very rapidly that this is a very limited way to approach the selfie. There is no single selfie that expresses identity. People who take selfies, they take multiple selfies, they take serial selfies, and these selfies fit into larger narratives that unfold across the internet, right? So what does it mean to these young women who are coming into representation, who are mediating themselves, becoming media, in other words, sort of owning the gaze? What does it mean to negotiate those visual tropes and to think about? So I started thinking about moving away from thinking about the selfie as a photographic product to thinking about the selfie as a process, right? So I went back to the definition of the selfie, and most of us remember that the selfie was nominated as the Oxford Dictionary's Word of the Year in 2013, right? And so the definition of a selfie, it is not just a photographic product. A selfie is taken in order to be uploaded to social media websites, right? So a selfie is taken in order to be communicated, right? So Senft and Bain in 2015, there were special issues sort of manifesting the interdisciplinary interest that the selfie has provoked. The Biography did a special issue on the selfies, the Journal of Biography, and the Journal of the International Journal of Communication also did a special issue on selfies. So what is a selfie? What is a selfie? A selfie is a photographic object that initiates the transmission of human feeling in the form of a relationship. A selfie is also a practice, a gesture that can send and is often intended to send different messages to different individuals, communities, and audiences. Right, so now I'm thinking about the wider picture then. How do these selfies circulate? How do they fit into theories or ideas about narrative and identity on the internet? And then I came up against sort of two stumbling blocks, because both narrative and identity are very contested terms in the field of online studies, right? Identity, perhaps, because for some theorists, some scholars, there is still this lingering notion, the possibility that it expresses the idea of a self that pre-exists the text, right? So scholars have kind of looked around for other terms to describe identity work online. They come up with phrases like identification, affect, automediality, nomadic subject. These are alternative ways about thinking about identity online, right? And then, of course, narrative. Although the term narrative is bandied around across the disciplines these days, in online studies it is a contested term, right? And this is because it is still seen to pertain quite narrowly to the literary text. We all know what narrative is. It's the imposition of sequence on an otherwise disconnected series of events, right? A narrative has causality, teleology. A narrative develops in a linear fashion, diachronic, through time, right? But then there's another way of thinking about narrative. In fact, there's a dual understanding of what narrative is. Narrative is also a culturally assimilated practice, right? It is the way we make sense of our experience. From a very young age, we learn how to tell stories about ourselves to each other, about the world that we live in, right? So there's this dual understanding of narrative. Right, so what were these narratives going to look like online? Because, of course, online, the problems online, if we're thinking about narratives, traditional unities, the unities are sort of time and place and plot, what happens to these when they're online? I mean, according to the Cambridge Introduction to Narrative, what does narrative do for us? If we had to choose one answer above all, the likeliest that narrative is the principal way our species organises its understanding of time. But online, we have this ongoing present tense, right? So how does that work? Yes, so according to the French autobiographical scholar Philippe Lejeune, online self-representation is the end of narrative identity, right? Because he says that autobiography is about harmonising of past and present identities, and so he foresees the end of narrative identity in online self-representation. Of course, Douglas Rushkoff, coming from the social sciences, he says that we live in a post-narrative world, right? That we're flailing around, trying desperately and failing to cope with the ever-present tense that we're experiencing since the advent of Web 2.0. So I chose this quote because it's quite interesting. He says, games point the way towards new ways of accomplishing what used to be done with stories. They may not be a cure-all, but they can successfully counteract some of the trauma we suffer when our stories come apart. Our disillusionment is offset by a new sense of participation and self-direction. So here, the use of the word trauma is quite interesting, because so the American autobiographical theorist Paul John Eakin has observed how online, both offline and online, there are cultural demands on us to have a coherent identity, right? And narrative is a signature of that coherence. So when narrative breaks down, as it does, for example, in cases of trauma or injury or dementia, Alzheimer's, right? We read that as being a loss of identity, right? So when narrative breaks down, this means that we lose our identity, okay? So other interesting thoughts there, this notion of participation and self-direction. Then I've chosen a quote also from Jill Walker-Retberg, who gives us another idea about thinking about narrative. Right, she's written a lot about narratives online, in particular recently narratives that arise from life logging. You know, those devices you can wear to like measure your pulse and your heartbeat and stuff like that, and your pregnancy. So distributed narratives are stories that aren't self-contained. They're stories that can't be experienced in a single session or in a single space. They're stories that cross over into our daily lives, becoming as ubiquitous as the network that fosters them. So participatory narratives, ubiquitous narratives. Well, what do these narratives look like? So we all know what traditional narrative looks like, because we have a whole host of theorists to tell us what traditional narrative looks like, from Vladimir Prop to Roland Barthes to the recently departed Svetlana Todorov. They all tell us what narratives share, what they have in common, right? Yes, I am setting up a rather simplistic definition of narrative here to work against. Sorry about that. Anyway, but online, narratives can look like this, right? They don't necessarily have a middle or an end. They can go wherever you want to take them, right? So, what are some of these characteristics of narratives online? Let's take a selfie, any old selfie, but a selfie will do. I look to the selfie I look for visual clues to the identity of the selfie taker. I think about things that are included in the image as well as things that are excluded from the image, because let's not forget that autobiographical narrative is as concealing as it is revealing, right? If I want to know more about this person, I will befriend them on Facebook. On Facebook I'll learn what are their likes, their dislikes, the music they like, what their dog looks like, what their grandparents look like, who their friends are, right? If I want to know more about perhaps their political leanings or general interests, I'll follow them on Twitter. I might choose to follow them also on Instagram, right? So I can follow a narrative of somebody online, and this narrative develops within the affordances of various media websites. Okay, it's important to bear in mind that we act on these platforms as we are directed, encouraged to act, right? And of course, Facebook doesn't. That self-representation online is also subject to the internal rules of genre, right? Not all self-images are permitted on Facebook, for example. Okay. So when we're thinking about this narrative as it unfolds online, it's important to remember that self is signifying not just as a product, but as a practice, right? That they are communicative. Narratives online are prospective. They are not retrospective, right? I'm constantly being exhorted by Facebook to update my status. I'm asked what's happening, right? So narratives online are both serial and cumulative, right? It's interesting to think about the ways in which selfies can be seen to blur visual and verbal modalities, right? If you're thinking about selfies as almost constituting a form of language, they're being taken to be sent, to be communicated. Often the ephemerality is part of their appeal, right? With certain messaging services, you can choose how long those photos are available to be seen before they're deleted, right? These narratives online are obviously non-linear, right? I'm creating, and my dominant plot narrative is becoming crisscrossed with other narratives. Because that's another way to think about identity online, is through identification, the groups we join, the hashtags we follow. It's interactive, it's collaborative. And what of this ongoing present tense then? Well, online I've become very adept at reading an ongoing present tense. And of course, narrative arcs are familiar to us from other media forms that don't imply a sort of a problem-solution pattern, right? They're familiar to us from such things as diaries, or reality TV, or weather reports, right? Which also, these forms don't place aesthetic value on closure, because we know there is no closure online, right? Even death doesn't put an end to your Facebook account, right? Yes, and so this ongoing, ever-present tense, sometimes perhaps the newsfeed will mirror chronology, sometimes it will be in reverse chronology, right? But the past is always present online. The past is there because Facebook has understood how important memory is to us in identity formation. So the past is constantly being recuperated, you know, in the form of sort of celebrating so many years in friendship, Throwback Thursday, a year in review. The past is recuperated and represented to us in the present tense, and it can be represented or reframed at any future moment, right? We have various tensions that are operating on this narrative online, where we have this sort of a centrifugal force, right? So a selfie accumulates in value the further that selfie travels on the internet in terms of clicks and likes and reshares, right? That selfie has greater value. But then the selfie that has the greatest value to me, right, so then you have the centripetal force, is the latest selfie, the most recent selfie, the selfie that captures the way I feel at that point in time, right? So you have this sort of contradictory sort of value system as well online. And you can also build narratives according to effect online, right? The way an image affects you. Paul Frosch has written about what he terms kinesthetic sociability. So the way in which we might click on an image before, in a way that is precognitive, right? So we react to something in a visceral or an emotional way with our hand on the keyboard before we've actually started thinking about what it might represent. So we can also build narratives that are shaped through effect. Okay, I could go on, but I won't. I'm going to conclude. So I'm going to say that it is both as practice and product that self is. Signify online, and critics must remain attentive to this distinction, right? So this online autobiographical narrative may strive for a coherent, unified self, but it remains fragmented, inconclusive, a series of provisional self-portraits where the multiplicity of images breaks up and offsets the imposition of a monolithic identity, in fact reveals the premises of its construction, right? And then finally, yes, I might say also that some of you will remember that 3 years after John Berger published Ways of Seeing and the Male Gaze entered our vernacular, that Ellen Sixou published Le Rire de la Méduse, also the same year that Laura Mulvey published Narrative Pleasure and or Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, which is a good year for second wave feminism. But so you'll remember then that Sixou, Interrogate, and Christeva were calling for and attempting to describe how women might come into narrative, how women might develop a language, a text that didn't look like a phallocentric text, right, that they were critiquing. They couldn't say what this writing would look like. We know that the narrative would be dispersed. We know that the narrative would be de-authored and effective, a narrative of the body to which the body responds, a language that is perhaps multimodal, the signifier giving rise to multiple signifieds, an interweaving of body and discourse, the revelation of a subject in process, le sujet en procès, de Christeva, a voice coming in from the margins, right? So I would suggest to you that these narratives of the self online forcibly generate productive uncertainty in the reading subject. And I suggest to you that these new narratives online look a lot like écriture féminine.